The Essays of Francis Bacon of Usury. Many have made witty invectives against usury. They say that it is pity, and devil should have God's part, which is the tithe. That the usurer is the greatest Sabbath breaker, because his plough goeth every Sunday. That the usurer is the drone that Virgil speak of. Ignavum focos pecus a praecipiblus arcent. That the usurer breaketh the first law which is made for mankind after the fall, which was insudore voltus tui commedis panem tuum, not insudore voltus alieni. That usurers should have orange tawny bonnets, because they do Judaize. That it is against nature for money to beget money, and the like. I say this only, that usury is a concessum propter duritium cordis. For since there must be borrowing and lending, and men are so hard of heart, they will not lend freely. Usury must be permitted. Some others have made suspicious and cunning propositions of banks, discovery of men's estates, and other inventions, but few have spoken of usury usefully. It is good to set before us the incommodities and commodities of usury, that the good may be either weighed out or called out, and warily to provide that while we make forth to that which is better, we meet not with that which is worse. The discommodities of usury are, first, that it makes fewer merchants, for were it not for this lazy trade of usury, money would not lie still, but would in great part be employed upon merchandising, which is the vena porta of wealth in a state. The second is that it makes poor merchants, for as a farmer cannot husband his ground so well if he sit at a great rent, so the merchant cannot drive his trade so well if he sit at a great usury. The third is incident to the other two, and that is the decay of customs of kings or states, which ebb or flow with merchandising. The fourth, that it bringeth the treasure of a realm or state into a few hands, for the usurer being at certainties and others at uncertainties at the end of the game. Most of the money will be in the box, and ever a state flourisheth when wealth is more equally spread. The fifth, that it beats down the price of land, for the employment of money is chiefly either merchandising or purchasing, and usury waylays both. The sixth, that it doth dull and damp all industries, improvements, and new inventions, wherein money would be stirring if it were not for this slug. The last, that it is the canker and ruin of many men's estates, which in process of time breeds a public poverty. On the other side, the commodities of usury are, first, that howsoever usury in some respect hindereth merchandising, yet in some other abundeth it. For it is certain that the greatest part of trade is driven by young merchants upon borrowing at interest, so as if the usurer either call in or keep back his money, there will ensure presently a great stand of trade. The second, that were it not for this ease borrowing upon interest, men's necessities would draw upon them a most sudden undoing, in that they would be forced to sell for their means, be it lands or goods, far under foot, and so, whereas usury doth but gnaw upon them, bad markets would swallow them quite up. As for mortgaging or pawning, it will little mend the matter, for either men will not take the pawns without use, or if they do, they will look precisely for the forfeiture. I remember a cruel moneyed man in the country that would say, the devil take this usury, it keeps us from forfeitures of mortgages and bonds. The third and last is, that it is a vanity to conceive that there would be ordinary borrowing without profits, and it is impossible to conceive the number of inconveniences that will ensure if borrowing be cramped. Therefore, to speak of the abolishing of usury is idle. All states have ever had it, in one kind or rate or other, so as that opinion must be sent to Utopia. To speak now of the reformation and reaglement of usury, how the discommodities of it may be avoided and the commodities retained, it appears by the balance of commodities and discommodities of usury, two things are to be reconciled. The one, that the tooth of usury be grinded, that it bite not too much. The other, that there be left open a means to invite moneyed men to lend to merchants for the continuing and quickening of trade. This cannot be done except you introduce two several sorts of usury, a less and a greater, for if you reduce usury to one low rate, it will ease the common borrower, but the merchant will be to seek for money. And it is to be noted that the trade of merchandise, being the most lucrative, may bear usury at a good rate, other contracts not so. To secure both intentions, the way would be briefly thus, that there be two rates of usury, the one free and general for all, the other under license only to certain persons and in certain places of merchandising. For therefore let usury in general be reduced to 5 in the 100, and let the rate be proclaimed to be free and current, and let the state shut itself out to take any penalty for the same. This will pressure borrowing from any general shop or dryness. This will ease infinite borrowers in the country. This will, in good part, raise the price of land, because land purchased at 16 years' purchase will yield 6 in the 100 and somewhat more, whereas the rate of interest yields but 5. This, by like reason, will encourage and edge industrious and profitable improvements, because many will rather venture in that kind than take 5 in the 100, especially having been used to greater profit. Secondly, that be certain persons licensed to lend to known merchants upon usury at a higher rate, and let it be with the cautions following. Let the rate be even with the merchant himself, somewhat more easy than to be used formerly to pay, for by that means all borrowers shall have some ease by this reformation, be he merchant or whosoever. Let it be no bank or common stock, but every man be master of his own money. Not that I altogether mislike banks, but they will hardly be brooked in regard of certain suspicions. Let the state be answered some small matter for the license, and the rest left to the lender. For if the abatement be but small, it will no whit discourage the lender. For he, for example, that took before 10 or 9 in the 100 will sooner descend to 8 in the 100 than give over his trade of usury, and go from certain gains to gains of hazard. Let these licensed lenders be in number indefinite, but restrained to certain principal cities and towns of merchandising, for then they will be hardly able to cover other men's money in the country, so as the license of 9 will not suck away the current rate of 5, for no man will send his monies far off, nor put them into unknown hands. If it be objected that this doth in a sort authorize usury, which before was in some places but permissive, the answer is, that it is better to mitigate usury by declaration, than to suffer it by rage and connivance.